Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this morning's CEN-CENELEC webinar. It's the last webinar of the year, so we will, of course, continue our webinars next year. You will be informed about that soon. So please bear in mind that you're all muted during the webinar, but you can use the question panel to enter your questions in a written way. If there is time left, we will address the answers to the questions. If your question remains unanswered, you will find it back on the website in a written form later, and you will in any case be informed about that via email. You also have the possibility to tweet about the webinar. Please then use the hashtag CEN-CENELEC to do so. So please let me introduce you the speakers of today. Well, I will not introduce them in details, but you see that we have for today's webinar 4 speakers that are here appearing in order of appearance, but they will be introduced to you during the session. So please, René, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. My name is René van der Kemmen, and I'm in charge of the implementation of the digital transformation strategy at CEN-CENELEC. And yes, indeed, in 2017, in June, the CEN and CENELEC administrative boards and general assemblies have adopted a strategic plan for digital transformation. The strategic plan is addressing basically 2 axes. One is how we can support the digital transformation of industry and meet the needs of the various industry sectors. The second is about the digital transformation of CEN-CENELEC itself, and make sure that the system, as we call it, becomes more agile and adaptable to the market needs and the technology innovation. In 2017 as well, the administrative boards have adopted 4 projects which are currently in progress. The first one is about so-called online standardization or standards development, is about the way we're going to draft standards in the future. The project 2 is about the standards of the future, is about the format in which we will deliver the content in the future. Project 3 is about strategic alliance. It means establishing partnerships, especially in the digital transformation domain. And project 4 is about open source, and more especially how we can link standardization and open source. And now I will give the floor to Eric Cornet, our IT manager, who is going to talk to you about project 1.
Okay, thank you, René. So good morning, everybody. So first, I will talk about the objectives of project 1. So the objective is to provide is the modernization and digital transformation of standards development in CEN and CENELEC. And this will address several aspects. The first one is a seamless and user-friendly collaborative environment. And maybe I could say a word about the seamless aspects. You know, that's a complaint that we received, that people have to use several IDs and passwords to log to different application or log in several times. So some time ago, it was decided to create a federation between CEN, ISO, and also it encompasses AFNOR and DIN. And now the good news is that this federation will be extended to IEC, let's hope by the end of the year, and CENELEC should follow in 2019, which means that with just one login, you will be able to access the application which are in the complete standardization ecosystem. The interoperability and integration with the national and international system is also very important. Of course, joint solutions with ISO and IC will always be favored whenever possible. And it shall also enable new means and forms of content exploitation, which means that this new online standardization platform shall also take into account the output of the project 2, which is focused on the content. The project leader for the project one is Bruno Berken from AFNOR. Your CCMC contact is myself, so Eric Cornet. And there is a supporting group, which is the Working Group Online Standardization Platform. So where are we right now? The focus is essentially on providing an online collaborative solution to draft, review, and comment on technical documents in line with ISO in IC. And so for the time being, there is a proof of concept which is running based on the technology which is called Fonto XML. So this proof of concept will run until the end of this year. And so hopefully by the end of January, there will be a recommendation from the ISO, ITSAC, and IC ITAC on whether this technology is ticking all the boxes regarding the requirements we have in terms of collaborative authoring. And so if it's the case, if we carry on with this technology, hopefully by the end of 2019, we should have a pilot in CEN-CENELEC with an online collaborative authoring platform. The interest, there are several benefits with this project. The first is that from the technical committee side, you have just to put the focus mainly on the content and not on the formatting of the text. Also, there is versioning capabilities. There is also redlining, which means you can select two different versions of the document or of the content and be able to compare them, see what's different, but also to see who made the changes or made the proposal related to between the two versions. It's also much more easier to work directly on the same document in a collaborative way. And also the purpose is to be able to tackle also the commenting within the application. And to be honest, so I'm also in the users group. Two users group have been set up, one in IC, one in ISO, to assess this technology. So I'm personally in both groups. So, but what I've seen up to now is quite impressive, what you can do with Fonto XML. And there is also an additional advantage. It's the fact that with Fonto XML, you will be able to store natively the content of the standard in the XML format, which is compliant with the NISO STS schema, which means that we will be able to produce directly standards in XML format. So the production chain behind will be also much more efficient. Evolution of the technical body's working platform. So as you know, also IEC decided to change, to move to a newer technology for the collaboration tool platform. And they already roll out to the new collaboration platform starting from April. And so it was a progressive rollout and they finished in June. And so for CENELEC, a date is already fixed. So we will do the rollout to the new collaboration platform on the 31st of January. So which means from the 29th of January, the old collaboration platform will be freezed. So you will still have a read access to the old platform. All the documents will be migrated to the new platform on the 30th of January, and from the 31st, the new collaboration platform will be available. Yes, also the current version of our e-committee platform, so that's on the CEN side. The support will come to an end in March 2021. So ISO is also investigating for the time being alternative technologies, also including LiveLink itself, of course. But so whatever it is, probably there will be a change in the e-committee platform planned for 2021. Yes, about the new virtual meeting facility. So on Also, there will be some changes here. IC and ISO already started to use Zoom instead of GoToMeeting and WebEx. For the time being, for CEN-CENELEC, we still use GoToMeeting. And we are planning also to follow and to adopt Zoom, hopefully in Q1 next year. The only issue we still have to, I would say, to solve is the fact that when you are only able to register once a person with his email address in the system for one organization. And of course, we have also people who are in both organizations, who are in ISO and CEN, or who are also in IC and CENELEC. So we have to find just a solution for those people who are in both organizations. And when it's done, then we will deploy Zoom in CEN-CENELEC. And also, this project is also considering testing the new ways of working. Of course, so this is, you can see that there are also many technical aspects which are involved, but it's not all, especially when you move to collaborative authoring platform, for instance. It means that it will have impact on the way of working in the technical committee, the way of drafting the standards. It also means that we have also to tackle seriously the support and the coaching that we will give in this context to ensure that the acceptance of all those new tools and changes are taken smoothly. So I will now give back the floor to René van der Kamen for the project 2.
So yes, here I am again, and I'm going to tell you about project 2, Standards of the Future. So the objective of the project is to put CEN-CENELEC in a position to deliver machine-readable, but especially machine-interpretable standards content. It means usable by applications and machines. And of course, we will have to address different aspects. And of course, the first thing is adapt the processes and the rules that we are currently using. And of course, behind processes, there will be a lot of things. Probably the way we structure the content, and Eric has already hinted part of it, talking about XML, but there might be also other aspects as well. It's not the only format. Of course, we have to also address the responsibilities, who will have to produce this type of content, what type of support we might have to provide, who will provide this support. But of course, also, not all the standards probably need to be machine interpretable. Which standards need to be, what kind of content, all this needs to be, let's say, made visible and will affect this, the processes. But we will also, that's important as well, set the legal framework, especially to help the members of CEN-CENELEC to develop a new business model which is based on exploitation of digital content rather than sales of standards. And that's a quite challenging aspect as well of the project. Now, in terms of organization, the project is led by Mr. Rudiger Marquardt from DIN. I'm the CMC contact point. And we have two groups supporting the project, one called the Task Force Digital Content. The leader is called Fischer, and dealing more with all the non-legal and IPR, I would say, aspects. And we have a second group, the ad hoc legal platform, JCAG, led by Mr. Willem Takats, and which is addressing more the IPR and commercial aspects. Now, where are we with the project? We've already done quite a lot of things, but what we are focusing on for the moment is better understanding what are the industry needs in terms of content, and how can we respond to that. So in 2019, we will start and hope finish 2 pilot projects which will aim at the structuring content of the standards and especially focusing on the requirement section to make them machine interpretable. And we have chosen to work in 2 different industrial sectors. One is construction, and the leader of this project will be Netherlands. And the other one is in the petroleum sector, and the leader is Standards Norway. In order to avoid difficulties and delays linked to the consensus process and the acceptance, we have decided to use existing standards, which we know are already used by industry and transformed to be used in applications. Of course, we will have in the project team participation of end users of the standards of the relevant industries, but we will also need the participation of TC experts to make sure that when we change the format of the content, we don't change the technical meaning of the standards content. And of course, we will also use external consultancy, basically for the structuring aspects and also usability by applications. In parallel to the pilot projects, we will also continue to work on other aspects which we have started in 2018, but there's still quite some work to be done. Of course, I mentioned the process, and that will probably be continuous while we work on this project, that we will identify things that impact the process. I mentioned already the digital content protection, also the liability aspects, and for that, some concrete actions will already be taken in 2019. We will also continue the discussion on the business model, as I mentioned, especially for our members, because we have a real change of paradigm here. And last but not least, we will work on defining some possible scenarios, how to organize, so the architecture of repositories of this content. We know that first, we have quite a lot of discussions and maybe ideas about whether the content should be centralized, decentralized. De facto, our members are faced to decentralized content because they sell standards and content from ISO, from IEC, from CEN, from CENELEC, and also national level. And of course, that requires good thinking, what would be the, let's say, most appropriate way to organize that. And now I'm going to give the floor to Ashok Ganesh, who is Director of Market Perspective and Innovation, who will introduce Project 3.
Good morning, everybody. As René said, I'm going to talk about the project on strategic alliances. The rationale for the project is that, of course, in the digital areas, with the uptake of by stakeholders of many fast-moving digital technologies, CEN and CENELEC need to be able to provide the standardization support to those industries who are all connecting. Their processes are online, they're generating data, they're using the cloud, they have cyber issues, also their supply chains and also their distribution networks. So CEN and CENELEC are, like any organizations, not suddenly going to become experts in all of these digital technologies which are evolving and fast moving, and their applications becoming more and more sophisticated. We can't become experts overnight. So the idea to partner in a strategic way with those entities that can provide CEN-CENELEC with competencies, with knowledge in those fields is obviously the focus of this work. The project is wisely led by our leader Richard Taylor from BSI. My colleague Inés Criar and myself are the CCMC contacts, and the work is led by the Task Force Strategic Alliances. The aims of the project are probably threefold in terms of having knowledge, gaining knowledge of, or gaining the capacity of the knowledge of these technical areas, these ICT technologies, putting us in contact with platforms or associations or new structures where new standardization needs can be voiced and channeled into the CEN-CENELEC work program, and also addressing some maybe horizontal areas. For example, one that was discussed in the early part of the project was about addressing a younger generation of experts working in different fields and potentially their introduction into the standardization world. The project is decided, following in line with CEN-CENELEC's decades-old focus on our customer base, smart manufacturing, so that makes sense. And the idea is to look at defining the most suitable partners, stressing that the partnerships, the alliances, of course, should be win-win. It's not about CEN-CENELEC simply getting what we need to run our activities, but obviously there needs to be a return to potential future partners. Some pieces of work that the task force has already looked at is things like stakeholder mapping in the smart manufacturing area, value generation, so a so-called value proposition. How can we express what the future value would be? But in 2019 will be to come with a defined selection criteria that can be deployed in the process of selecting future partners in the digital domain. And that will also involve looking at existing tools, existing mechanisms that we have for partnering. CEN-CENELEC are a network, and we have many partners of different types at the technical level, with technical committees, liaisons, partners at the organizational level, but also participants in things like CEN-CENELEC focus groups, identifying new areas of standardization, to name just but a few. And those are backed up by CEN-CENELEC Guide 25, the concept of partnership with European organizations and other stakeholders, and the CEN-CENELEC Guide 23, the so-called consortium bridge, linking with organizations, third-party developers of specifications. So this is the work of the task force and the project strategic alliances. And in 2019, in the spring, the expectation is to come with some recommendations on especially those two specific areas, the criteria for selection, and an overview of the existing mechanisms, and perhaps some recommendations how those can be streamlined further in the digital domain. With that, I'll pass you on to Jens for the fourth and final project, Jens Geico.
Yeah, so thank you very much, and good morning also from my side. My name is Jens Geico, and I'm from DKI, the German National Committee of CENELEC, and together with Andreas Lamm from DIN, we are both leaders of this project. We have support from CCMC, from Bruno Chenard and Samira Nick, and they support us in this project. And we have also the supporting group, the Task Force Open Source, which is a group of about 15 up to 20 people interested in this topic. What is the basic idea behind the project? If you look at standardization activities, this is a kind of collaborative development of requirements and sometimes also of a specification. If you look at open source, this is also collaborative development, but here you implement something. And especially if you look at standards for interoperability, like for an interface, communication interface, or for data structure, for example, or a set of an API, so an application programming interface. This is very often you refine the specification by implementing something and by learning from the implementation, and then you refine the specification, and then you can refine your implementation. And therefore, the basic idea was to develop an approach to link both processes, to link the standardization activity and to link the implementation in an open source collaborative way. With that, we think the project supports both aims of the strategic plan for digital transformation, because the project will support the digital transformation of the industry by providing a new collaborative way of developing a standard and a kind of open source implementation at the same time. And also it will support the digital transformation of the standardization itself, so of CEN-CENELEC. As mentioned before, I think this approach has a very big potential for standards for interoperability. Maybe it's not relevant for all kinds of standards, like a very fundamental safety standard. We will probably develop more in a traditional way, even in the future. What are the objectives? There is not the intention to reinvent the wheel, so we want to establish links with open source communities and to develop or adopt the methodology to integrate these activities into the standardization activities and to combine both. We go to the next slide. Okay, sorry, one slide back. Sorry. We have made an analysis of the current activities and also defined 3 use cases for the possible synergies with open source. So the first 2 you can see are more sequential based. You have a standard deliverable, and based on that you have an open source implementation. That is possible already today, and sometimes this happens. Also the second one, you have an open source project which developed like an interface protocol or something else, and then you make a standard out of that. That is also possible today. The third one is more the iterative way. Here you have a kind of testbed or proof of concept approach, and this is going in parallel to the development of the standard. And here we think there's a great potential for that. We identified, or we made a questionnaire among the TCs of CEN-CENELEC, and we have seen a very high rate of replies, so that shows a big interest in that. And out of that replies, we identified a pilot project of CEN-TC 434 for e-invoicing. Here is the request from the European Commission to make available not only the standard, but also to make available the machine-readable or executable content. And so we think this is a quite good test bed or a pilot project, and this project will start hopefully beginning of next year. So it was finally approved by CEN-CA. And here we can see how the open source software can be made available as a deliverable, and how the standardization deliverables can be used for the development of open source. And as you probably see, this is closely related to the previous project, especially with project number 2. We have a close contact because in terms of liability and in terms of business models for these new approaches, we are in very close contact. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I hand over to René.
Okay, should be fine now.
Oh.
Oh.
Sorry about that. Some technical issues. So, yes, you've heard that there's quite a lot of groups and quite a lot of people working on the various projects in the digital transformation of CEN-CENELEC. And in order to give the strategic directions and monitor the project, we have created a CEN-CENELEC Digital Transformation Steering Committee. This committee is reporting directly to the CEN and the CENELEC administrative boards. And the chairman of the steering committee is Mr. Ruggero Lenzi, who is also the vice president technical of CEN and also the chairman of the CEN-BT. And so what I mentioned is that we have 4 projects for the moment. Of course, we call them pilot projects because these are initiatives that should feed the strategy. There might be other projects in the future, but that's where we are today. Now, if we want to summarize what we have learned today, the learning points that we call them in the 10-10 strategy. So CEN-CENELEC is currently working on different aspects. First, we work on moving from what we call document-centric way of working to content-centric way of working, also to be more collaborative in the way we work, and that's what Eric in Project 1 has explained, and that we will have a pilot if everything goes well at ISO and IC level, but we are confident at this stage that we will have a pilot with a new online authoring tool by the end of 2019. As far as Project 2 is concerned, we are in a learning curve how to create machine interpretable standards in line, of course, with the industry needs, and for that we will have 2 pilots in 2019, one in the construction, one in the petroleum. By the way, the purpose of this project is not to deliver something which is marketable, but more to gain experience and to see what we have learned in this project can be used to make something more generic in terms of rules and processes. On the Project 4, we are, as Jens just explained, we are trying to better understand how we can link standardization and open source, and there again there will be a pilot project on the electronic invoicing in 2019, at least starting in 2019. And last but not least, as Ashok mentioned in Project 3, we are setting the framework to build added value partnerships to bring in competences that we might not have in our community, because we cannot have everything. And there again, the tools that we are working on for the moment will be tested on the smart manufacturing sector.